Hey everyone, a big welcome back to the Nick Elston Show, Season 5, Episode 23, and Day 2 of our Podcast Today release week, which is going out in November. So following the success of yesterday's episode, I never edit this stuff, as you guys know, but when I trip over my words, I'm going to leave it in. Episode, the word I was looking for, with Paul Holbrook, the founder of Diary Detox, the Time Rebel. Really great episode. Thanks again to Paul for being on. Today I'm following up with another amazing guest. And actually, as part of today, we're tackling something that I've never spoken about before. So could you please put your hands together for Emma Sharpe?
Hi, everyone.
You all right?
Yeah, hi.
A very stuttery build-up there. I do apologise. I put my teeth back in. So, Em and I, our paths first crossed through the power of kind of LinkedIn and online networking, all that kind of stuff. So actually, lockdown has produced a few silver linings, and this has certainly been one of them. So really great to know Em and what she does, and less about that from me and more from Em. Em, tell us who you are, what you do, and where you're from.
Okay, so I'm Emma Sharpe. My business is Study Sharpe. I offer bespoke and accredited sign language courses for businesses, staff teams, deaf awareness courses, deaf awareness strategies. Basically, I go into organisations and say, how can you make your services more accessible to sign language users and to deaf people? So that's your processes and your digital kind of presence, your website, your paperwork, everything really, but mostly staff teams and how to, enable them to communicate and learn sign language so that they can, actually interact with those sign language users that they might actually get as deaf clients, customers. So that's me. I come from, do you mean where I was born, I guess you mean?
Yeah, not so much your address. I don't want anybody to hide in the bushes or anything. I don't want any arrests following this, but like kind of roughly where you're from.
So, I grew up in Kent. I was born in Kent, in, hop city or hip hop kind of land of the countryside. So I'm a country lass. And then over the years, I moved all over the place for various personal reasons, ended up in Somerset, in Weston-super-Mare, lived there, got married there, had my child there. And then I moved to West Somerset, and I now live in the beautiful part of the Quantocks.
Beautiful. So like literally the opposite side of the country from where you started from. So
yeah, basically, yeah.
Love that. The reason why I was so keen to get you on, not just because of kind of who you are and what you're about, but the subject is actually, I've always found a fascinating one. And again, it's not something I've ever shared before, but there's a branch of our family which where I have two family members who are deaf. And it's a really interesting one that when I used to run like a local bar back in the day. And the Skittles team used to have a deaf Skittles team turn up. And everyone just seemed to be really afraid to engage with them in the sense that I find it, and I want to kind of, my approach to these kind of things, rather than just kind of like nod and agree and just listen to what you're going to say, it's actually to ask questions as well, because I think that's how we learn, right? Now, yeah. I mean, so I would go and talk and hug and everything else that I do, but why are other people so afraid of engaging with deaf people?
I think it's because, especially if people are signing, people that are non-signers, hearing people, anybody that doesn't sign they stare because they think, oh, wow, that's different. I've not seen that before. You don't see it every day. So it's kind of something different. So people are interested and fascinated. But I think it's also that fear of, well, what if I do engage with them and then I can't, because I can't sign, I can't speak to them, I can't communicate with them. So I end up looking an idiot, or I end up making it embarrassing for them or both of us. So people are reluctant in that way, I think, because it's that fear of failure, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know we'll cover the professional stuff as well, but just on a very human level, I just find it really strange. Whether it's because I've had the benefit of engaging with deaf people for most of my life, that I'm not sure why that is the case with other people see it as such of a, like you said, yeah, it's just weird. I just find it really strange. And I'm glad we can have this kind of really open conversation about it, because it's an important topic. And but before we get into that, because I can see this rabbit hole kind of opening up right now that we could go straight down, but I want to take you back. So tell us about baby Em. Tell us about growing up, family, education. Where were you? I know kind of geographically where you're from now, but kind of what were you about at that point, and what was your journey to what you do today?
So yeah, I grew up in a family where we were all chefs. So my dad was in catering. My brother followed suit and went to Westminster College, catering college. So did my dad. So they both went into that world. And so our household was all about food. We spoke about nothing else every mealtime, all the time. That's all that we were sort of, it was like obsessive about food. And so we were always about food. Dad and my brother were always talking about it, making food, cooking, bringing food home. And so that was the life growing up. My dad was in the Navy, and in the Second World War, he had a shrapnel injury and he became deaf. And so that was the kind of start of, as a teenager, learning how to cope with deaf dad. And, in the countryside, we grew up in a village, so everyone knew everyone. It was very kind of like that. And so, my dad was part of the community, did lots of community sort of based stuff, emergency sort of planning, and, he was on the local kind of committee and council and all that sort of thing. So, we grew up around village life, and that's all we knew really. And then I sort of ended up going to school locally and then college locally, and did my A levels. And mum and dad were always very keen for us to be sort of properly spoken, inverted commas, even though we came from kind of the country. And a lot of my friends and our neighbours were very kind of country-based, earthy type people, and weren't that educated. But mum and dad were always like, you lot have got to go and make your way and get qualifications and get a good job. And so it was kind of drummed into us that success thing and trying to make your way and not just settle for anything less, really. So that was kind of quite a big thing with both my parents.
With your dad, and it is kind of the social commitments in kind of being very active in the community.
Yeah.
Did he find any kind of barriers from other people engaging due to the kind of, I'm assuming here, the kind of the lack of awareness around things like sign language or even kind of deafness generally?
Deafness generally, because dad was a talker. Dad worked in the city, he knew everybody. My dad would talk to anyone. He was a very sociable being, and everyone loved my dad. But when he started to lose his hearing dramatically, he got hearing aids in his glasses, in the arms of his glasses, which was a course of hilarity for all of us siblings, because my dad was always going like this, and we were saying, "You're whistling, Dad," and he'd go, "Oh yeah," and instead of like with hearing aids, you kind of adjust them. He'd just do this with his glasses, which was funny. But, he used to go to meetings and come home and moan about it and say, "Oh, I couldn't hear what they were saying. Everyone was talking at once. I missed a load of points on the agenda, or so-and-so mumbles, or he's got a big beard, so I can't understand him, so I won't talk to him again." So he just used to moan about generally being able to understand people in a group, going to meetings, people being not very thoughtful, not speaking clearly. And he'd just come home and moan about it to my mum and, and to the rest of us. And we'd just say, "Oh, yeah, poor Dad," kind of thing. And it was just part of the way it was, that Dad used to just cope with it.
Do you find, I guess, to have had hearing and then to have lost it, I guess you kind of feel the extremes at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it's so true that people grieve hearing loss, especially if you've been hearing and then you start to lose it. So that whole kind of deafened, losing hearing as you get older, as well as, through an injury like my dad, it's kind of grieving what you've lost. And I know that's probably quite an unpopular view in sort of the field I'm in terms of the deaf community, because they don't see themselves as, having a loss of any kind. They're proud to be deaf, but hard of hearing people and deafened people and people that have lost their hearing and started out hearing often do go through that process of kind of denial and shock and anger and upset. And my dad was like that. He used to sometimes almost cry with the frustration of not being able to be understood, not being able to catch everything people were saying, especially in the pub. He used to love a pint, and he'd go in the local pub and he'd come home sometimes and just sit there with his head in his hands and say, it's not like it used to be. I can't hear everyone, so I miss things and I feel stupid. And I remember him saying that sometimes when he was perhaps a bit down.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is we associate the ability to either talk with clarity or to engage with cleverness or education, isn't it? And that's not the equation at all, is it? And like you said, the grief element is really interesting. I can absolutely see why that could be the case. Again, not that I can understand, but I can appreciate why you would say that, because if you look at things like the pandemic and lockdown and lots of different things, that very often grief has been a huge factor, not necessarily due to a loss of a human life, but that has been the case, of course, but it's been due to the loss of a way of life, a loss of freedom, a loss of liberty, whatever that may be. So that makes sense to me why somebody would feel that way. It's not that they can't reach that point of acceptance, and like you said, to embrace it, but it has to be that process if you've had something and they haven't. And I think sometimes people, they overlook that, they forget that's the experience of many people that go through that, is that they might be at one of those stages at any point, and trying to get through to the next stage of, either acceptance or just, grin and bear it, like we do, stiff upper lip. British people were often like that still. And it's just, it's that whole kind of survival thing. I've just got to get used to it and adapt the way I live. But people don't always adapt around you. That's the problem. Yeah, absolutely. So kind of what was, so you mentioned kind of the education, what about early kind of professional life?
For me, well, I had a massive thing happen to me. So when I left college at 18, I'd always known I wanted to teach. And I wanted to teach drama because my sister's an actress, and that was always in us. My mum and dad were in Amdram. They always were performing and singing. My mum was very musical. My dad played the spoons and sang, and my sister sings. So we're a very musical family, or we were.
I grew up with the spoons. My granddad played the spoons.
Oh, bless you. Yeah, it's a very Pearly Queen type London. They were EastEnders thing. And so we grew up with mum playing the piano. We had a pianola as well, and we put that on, we'd sing, my dad would play spoons. So I remember thinking I wanted to teach drama and then perhaps specialise and teach deaf children. That was my life goal at 18, which is unusual because most of us at 18 don't have a clue what we want to do. So I left college and I thought, right, I'm going to go and apply to teach training college. So I went to the Welsh College of Music and Drama. I applied there. They gave me a place and they said, we can see that you could be a great teacher. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. But they said, unfortunately, like for any teacher, you need to have your maths. And at the time, I'm so old, it was the GCE, and I didn't have it. So I only managed to do a CSE at the time, and I failed it miserably. I got ungraded. So I knew that maths wasn't my strong point. So, of course, they said, look, to teach anything, you need your English and maths. So go away, get your maths, we'll hold your place over for a year, and then come back to us. So I thought, right. So I went away, sleeves up, trying to get my maths in the next year, failed miserably again and again. I took it a few times. Got to the following year, went back to see them, said, look, please, cap in hand, please take me. Look, I'll try and do my maths while I'm studying. And they went, no, sorry, can't make exceptions. We'll have to let this place go. And they were really, I could see they were really sorry, and they felt my pain because I was devastated. I thought, God, what am I going to do? I remember going home, sitting in my lounge and crying for a week because I thought, what am I going to do? This is all I wanted to do, but I can't get my maths. It's just like a massive kind of, I just couldn't get past that at all. English, I was really okay with, but maths was a massive barrier. So I then just fell into a job. I fell into a job working for SCOPE. It wasn't called that then, but it is now. And I worked in a residential facility where I was a teaching assistant in the drama department, teaching disabled young people, but also deaf children with behavioural issues. And there was some deaf children there that signed. And so at 19, it was my first time seeing sign language and seeing children sign. And I just thought, wow, this is another language, a beautiful visual language that I don't know anything about. And I want to learn more. So that kind of ignited my interest. And I then did my level 1 sign language as part of that job. And then various things happened. And you know what it's like over the years, relationships break down. I had a marriage. I was married young and I divorced young. I shouldn't have got married. And when I divorced, I just went all over the place and lived my kind of like younger life because I didn't when I was married. So I went off and did all the things I didn't do when I was 18, 19, 20. So I traveled around the country, lived different places, did different jobs. And really, I didn't work with deaf people for another few years. And it was by chance I met someone who worked in a residential setting with deaf young people again and autistic young people. And I thought, I'm going to go back to that. So I became a house manager there. I did my next level sign. Oh, no, I didn't. I just did sign language in my work. And I loved it. And I thought, why have I left this behind? And so I did that for a while. And then that kind of finished and I couldn't go any further, with that. And then, various things happened. I got another job, which was completely out of the industry. And so time went on when I was just doing meaningless jobs, I guess, for a while. And then my dad, when I was about 37, my dad was really ill. So I went home and he was in bed and he'd had lots of heart problems. And he said to me, "And what are you doing with your life?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, you're just flitting about, wasting your time. You need to go and do something worthwhile. Go to university." And I said, "But Dad, I'm 37, nearly 38. There's no way I'm clever enough. I'm not clever enough for that. I couldn't even do my A-levels without a struggle." And he said, "Look, you can do anything you put your mind to." And my dad was very much like that whole kind of be true to yourself, mottos and things like that. So, I said, "Okay, whatever, Dad." Went home. About 3 days later, he passed away. He had a myocardial infarction, a massive heart attack at home, and that was it for my dad. So that really struck home then, because I thought, do you know what? I need to listen to what he said. So I went and applied to Bristol University for a Deaf Studies Bachelor of Science degree. I didn't know whether I'd get a place. I just rocked up, just went to see them. I just went, look, almost put my bag on the table and said, "Look, I've got no experience. I haven't signed for years. I haven't worked in the deaf community, but I really want to do this. Give me a chance." And they went, "Yeah, have a place." So I did my degree, which was amazing. I know, it was amazing. I had the best 3 years of my life, Nick. I lived like a 18-year-old. I had a class of 18-year-olds. I was one of the oldest, mature students there, but I could rock it. I was partying up to 4 a.m. and they were going home at 2, and I travelled up and down from Weston to Bristol on the train. I had a 2-year-old daughter. My ex-husband, her dad, looked after her while I went to uni and did that. So I got my degree and it was amazing. I'd been taught by these most amazing top deaf professional academic lecturers. They were amazing, all in sign language. All the lectures were immersed in sign language. And it was like, whoa, I haven't done any sign language since the year before when I just struggled to get my level 2, which was intermediate. So I was really struggling at first in lectures, but like any language, you immerse yourself, you're there all the time, everyone's signing, so you get better, and it became easier. And I did that. So I got that. And then I just lucky as anything, applied for a job at a local college and got a job there as a support worker working with deaf students. And that's how it began then, because I thought, right, I'm going to get into teaching again. And they were really good. They funded me to do my next sign language, which was my advanced sign language level 3. And they also funded me to do my Cert Ed, so that I was able to teach post-16 adults. And that was in 2010.
And that was through Weston College, wasn't it?
Yes, I worked there, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Years. Friends of the show and of mine. It's, the guys at Weston are fantastic. I'm glad you had that experience with them as well. So when did you actually make the decision to kind of branch out solo?
So 2019, really. So just before the pandemic, like many people, thinking I've had enough, I'm going to work for myself. I made the decision and then the pandemic hit. So it was a big shock. But you know what? I just thought I've just got to see this as a positive thing, and just get through it. And so I just put everything online. So on Zoom and on Teams, I taught on Zoom and Teams, and I was ready. I was made redundant. The college made me redundant. Mm-hmm. They had no funding left for my posts. I had 2 posts, and I just thought this is the right time, because I was running my business alongside being at college the last couple or 3 years, and I thought I need to go solo now. So it was my push to do that.
and it came at the right time. But yeah, it was scary, like everyone,
Yeah, it did, and it didn't. Like I said, I mean, we've had a few people on the show since that have actually kind of launched and kind of grown and hopefully flourished a business in the pandemic and in lockdown. It's certainly been a whole different experience. But the overarching theme was actually what it did do is it lit a fire under them to make sure that they did give everything they had at doing this. And I think certainly from the conversations that we've had today and kind of back and forth emails and stuff, that's something that really comes through is this passion for what you're doing, but the work ethic to go with it as well. And you mentioned you kind of launching an online business. How did you find those first kind of clients?
Well, I'm lucky because I worked a lot in North Somerset. So I was working face to face, outside of college and in college. So I was doing college work, but I was also working in the community. So I was working for the council, doing community learning with vulnerable learners. So I already do that. So I was doing that alongside the college. So, I had to go with my cap in hand to Dr. Paul and say, I want to do this work as well as work at college. And he said, yeah, that's fine. So I'd been doing that for about a year and a half before I was made redundant. So I was already out there in the community, and I was lucky because people start to get to know you. So I was getting business from that word of mouth business because people know me down there. And so, that's how it kind of progressed, is that, from word of mouth, people tell other people about you, and hopefully about your good service and your courses and you as a teacher and what you bring to the table and what learners' experiences are like. And then you get more kind of jobs and work from that, which is what happened.
Absolutely.
So, I'm really humbled about that, really.
Yeah, and you should be very proud of yourself as well. As it said, it's been a challenging time for people that have been long established, so let alone kind of people starting out. So yeah, I literally doff my cap to you. Well done. It's an amazing thing. Do you have any kind of like stats around kind of like the UK, for example, around what percentage of a workforce is kind of is deaf?
Okay. So 1 in 5 of us has some form of hearing loss in the UK at the moment. That's the stats at the moment. That's that's about 12 million people. And that is hearing loss, which could be mild, moderate to profound stroke severe. Sign language users, that varies. Actual first language sign language users, they think it's about 24,000 people in the UK using sign language as their first language for communication. But then the number increases rapidly when you think about all the professionals or the people using it for their jobs, sign language interpreters, support workers, and hearing people learning to sign. Then it becomes, a lot more, thousands because of that.
So are you truly being heard in life and in business? And think about that genuinely. If the answer to that is no, then you've found the right event. If you want to give yourself that boost personally and professionally, come along to Find Your Voice Live. This will change your life. This will be the game changer that you've been looking for.
It provides me with the confidence in myself to prove to myself that I can do it, I can get up on stage, I can speak.
There's absolutely nothing to be nervous about with these events. It's very, very open, very, very relaxed.
Help my confidence go from here at the beginning of the day to here at the end of the day.
Hey everyone, my name is Nick Elston. I'm an inspirational speaker on the lived experience of mental health and a transformational speaking coach. I'm the founder of Forging People, and Find Your Voice Live is our flagship event where we cross the boundaries of personal development, mental health, transformation, and public speaking. Your ability to speak, to deliver any message to any audience with clarity and power and emotion will have an ultimately defining impact on your success by your own definition of that really subjective term. Speaking is life, speaking is business, speaking is education, and that's the thing that we focus on most. What I find is that people are here for many, many different reasons. Some people do absolutely want to be a stage speaker or a professional speaker. Some people want to be able to represent their business or to lead a team or inspire a movement or create a story. But even actually, some people want to be here just because they want to be heard at home. Maybe they don't feel their opinions being heard, that they can't say yes to the things they want to say yes to or no to the things they want to say no to. Again, this is where personal development meets mental health, meets public speaking to create a real positive impact. At the end of Find Your Voice Live, you will walk away with massive confidence around delivering your message. The ability to stand up and deliver means you will enhance your self-esteem in an amazing way. You will also have the skills and tools and tips and techniques to not only deliver a presentation, but to structure a presentation, to find your audience, to be able to deliver emotional storytelling to help your audience feel and make them want to be part of your tribe, make them want to be part of your following, and really tune into what you're truly about, to truly make yourself heard in life and in business. If you're sat on the fence, if you're still not sure, take the model that I use, say yes, worry about it later, and I'll make sure that you're looked after brilliantly. Myself and my team will make sure that you have an amazing day, transformational day that will have the desired positive impact that you want to achieve.
Am I right in thinking that there's two sign languages in the UK that's used, or did I get that wrong?
Well, there's British Sign Language.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about Makaton, or is
That's
that
the
what you
word?
mean?
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Okay.
What's
So
the difference between the?
Okay, that's a really big question, and there's lots and lots of misconceptions around that.
You are welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
I stumble into these minefields. That's all. And it's fine.
yeah. It's this is a slightly controversial
Okay.
in some camps, but
Trust me,
Makaton-
after the last few episodes we've put out, controversy is not going to be a problem. It's all
Okay, so Makaton. So let's just break it down. So Makaton is a communication system that was developed to be used by young children and babies. So it's used and taught in preschools and nurseries, and it's a really good collection of signs for the first use of sign language by very young children. And also it was developed for using with people with communication issues, selective mutes, people that just can't verbally communicate, or also very, very useful to be used with people like Down syndrome people with learning difficulties.
Okay.
And the reason for that was because there is no grammar to it. There's no grammatical syntax. There's nothing like that. No kind of theory to learn. You don't have to construct sentences. It's just a collection. I say just, it's a massive, valuable tool, but it is a collection of signs that people use to communicate with either symbols and gestures as well. So it's really good for that. But one of the good things about it is that people learning those signs don't have to learn a grammar. So if somebody with learning barriers can't perhaps grasp the concept of a grammar in a language, then Makaton is really great for that because they don't have to learn that. So it's useful for certain groups of people. However, it's not a sign language in its own right because of that, because there's no grammar to it.
Yeah.
A language has to be a language because it has a grammar. If it doesn't have it, it can't be called that.
It's
So
a
it's a collection of
communication tool.
signs. It's a communication tool, exactly. Whereas British Sign Language, is the language of British deaf people, and it is a sign language in its own right because it does have its own grammar and it does have its own structure, much like English.
Yeah.
So that's why we can call it a sign language. But I think lots of people think, oh, Makaton's a sign language, but it isn't. But it's also a very, very good starting tool for allowing children, young people, and people that may, like I say, may not be able to grasp British Sign Language to start signing earlier on in their lives. And, you know, they can progress to British Sign Language later if they can or if they want to.
Yeah. See, this is why it's so important to ask questions. That's how you learn, isn't it? And
yeah,
I've never been afraid of doing that. I think especially on the show, it's things that I don't understand, whether it's generationally or culturally, that I think the best way is actually just to bring it on to here and just have an open chat about
bring it down.
Yeah, exactly. We've had the same approach to things like pronouns, and there's a lot of things that have been that you kind of hear around. You just don't want to nod and agree with, or equally you want to be defensive or aggressive against. It's best to have an open conversation. So thank you for sharing that. That's a lot of clarity in that. Thank you. I guess that professionally then, so obviously, which is the mainstream of what you do, when you work with organizations, what things should businesses have in place, would you say, are the main foundation blocks of having in place? Why do you get brought in, and what do you implement with organizations?
Okay, so it's looking at, one of the first port of calls, if for example, if you're doing consultancy, is just to look and liaise with HR departments if they have them, or the HR manager or the team that are looking after human resources, and just look at their processes from recruitment, from application through recruitment through to actually offering someone a post, and looking at that whole process and seeing if that's accessible to deaf people. So, are we offering sign language interpreters for interviews? That's a first absolute must, to ask that question, because if you don't ask, then you're not asking them what they need, and you need to ask the candidate, what do you need in the interview? Making sure that, are you a lip reader? Okay, so we need to make accommodations. We need to adapt the way we do our meetings to make sure that everyone speaks one at a time. So we're managing meetings in a different way. And lip readers are 24/7 lip reading, so you need breaks. So maybe a longer interview process needs short breaks to give that person time to kind of just relax and just take stock a minute. Paperwork, so application forms, too much jargon, making sure that information is presented in very simple English with bullet points, and it's very clear, and there's not loads of jargon. Because if someone is using sign language as their first language, then their English often is going to be their second language, and if they've grown up signing, then they may not have a strong command of comprehending English or writing or reading English. So therefore, present them with a leaflet or some information in writing. They're not always going to grasp or understand all of that. That doesn't mean they're devoid of intelligence at all. It just means that their first language is sign language, and that's not what they're looking at. So it's just, foreign to them. So we need to be aware of that and look at that paperwork and see if we can make it that much more accessible. So it's things like that. And then it's looking at the staff team.
Oh, sorry, I wouldn't have made that leap. I wouldn't have made that. Like I say, you explain things in such a way, and I can totally understand why you're so good at what you do now. You understand it in a way that I can actually, you explain it where I can understand that, in terms of, actually, if English was your second language, you wouldn't be able to get into the nuts and bolts of the contractual language and that kind of stuff. Never would have even thought of that. Amazing.
There's so much terminology and corporate terminology that we use in HR and in that whole sort of recruitment and policy writing and all those things. It's highbrow English, and it's not always accessible to sign language users. So then they will be, if you do give them things like that, they'll be going straight to their hearing family. Perhaps do read and write English better, or have a better command of that to help and to read it for them and to explain it to them, which shouldn't happen, should it? Shouldn't be like that.
No, absolutely. What about away from work then? So what do you like doing to kind of recharge your batteries?
Okay, so I do lots of things. I do lots of things. So I'm
going to have to dust the explicit rating off, because that laugh then would just meant a lot. It meant so many more things.
What do I do? So I love doing things with my hands. So I do lots of making things. So I do mixed media art. I make canvases. I use all different ephemera. I use all different materials. I work with real flowers, faux flowers. I make flower sort of arrangements at Christmas. I teach workshops in flower. Sort of, arrangements. I teach craft workshops. I sing. I love taking my dogs out. I love spending time with my children.
What do you like to sing?
Okay, well, I when I was at college, I was trained classically, and then over the years, I've done lots of different genres. But I just love to sing. I think I've probably lost it a bit over the years because I don't do it very much now. But I just love sort of a bit of jazz. I love classical. I love Coldplay are amazing.
Country?
Well, when you sent me that clip the other day,
Say yes. Say yes.
Say yes. It was actually very good. No, I do like some. And I've been watching one of my things, and it's one of my closet joys, is reality TV, and I've been watching Farmer Finds a Wife in Australia. And of course they're really into their country music, so I've been watching it
absolutely, You got a whole genre over there, Australian country. So you mentioned your dogs as well. Give your dogs a shout out. What do you have? What breeds? What names?
Oh, they're hiding. I've got 2 rescued puppies from Cyprus. We rescued them from a DEFRA registered charity in Cyprus. They're very unusual. That boy and a girl, brother and sister. They are Akita Inu, Japanese cross pocket pointers.
Wow.
He's like jaw drop.
Yeah. Trying to even think how that would actually look.
Oh, they're very unusual. They've got camel and white coats. They've got stripes along their head. They're beautiful. They're lovely.
Oh, very beautiful. Yeah. And well done on the rescuing side of things. That's amazing to hear that.
Yeah, important. The mum was on the street pregnant and she was rescued, and then she had her litter, and we had the 2 from the litter. Yeah. Dad's a farm dog, so he's quite happy, but the mum was very unhappy, bless her.
So what's next for Emma Sharpe?
What, my business plan or my life plan, or
both?
Life plan is to just, I'm looking forward to the future. You know, I want to travel. My partner and I want to travel. He's a workaholic. He works long hours, and eventually it will start to slow down and we'll have a happy retirement. We're both different ages. I'm a lot younger. I'm a lot older. Beg your pardon, older. He's a lot younger. So we're planning that carefully, because we want to kind of be off and not working together as much as we can before I'm too old to do anything. That's life plan, to go traveling, because the kids are getting to that age now where we don't really see them much. They're teenagers. They've got their cars, etc. Work plan for the next few years before that. I just want to. I think the biggest thing is I'm an ally and an advocate for the deaf community, and I just want to be accepted for what I do. You know, I'm not in it for the money. Yes, I have to earn a living, but I'm there to change in my small way. I want to change society and change it for the better for deaf people and for the deaf community. And you know, sometimes I get shouted down, and you know, sometimes you know, some members of the deaf community will say, you know, hearing people shouldn't be teaching sign language, and that includes me. But you know, I am an advocate. I am an ally, and I am passionate about it, and I fight for them every day. So I just want to be, you know, don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah, but I'm trying to understand, what's the pushback on that? Why would you not want somebody championing their cause?
Because, you know, and I understand where it comes from. And, you know, over the years, you know, when that backlash has come, that rare backlash, you know, it's water off a duck's back, and I rise above it. But you have to understand the position the deaf community are situated. You know, that attitude comes from years and years of oppression by hearing people towards deaf people, and that goes right back in deaf history. And you know, that's fact, that awful things happened, discrimination and oppression happened, and deaf people have been fighting for their language and for their existence and their heritage ever since, and from eternal time, to be, you know, to be allowed to be them, and to be proud to be deaf and proud of their language ever since. So it comes from that. So I understand that, because I'm hearing, and you know, there are a small fraternity that say, look, you're taking deaf people's jobs. You know, you shouldn't be earning a living from this. You're not a native sign language user. And you know, yes, I could be taking a deaf person's job. And yes, there are some amazing deaf sign language tutors out there. I'm not saying there aren't, but there are also tutors that are deaf and hearing that don't have good levels of qualifications and teaching knowledge, and know how to empower learners and to allow learners to flourish and to learn properly. So you can be a native user of a language but not have those skills or that skill set. So there are lots of good and very successful deaf sign language tutors out there, but there are equally some that maybe don't have that experience that I do. But there are also hearing tutors that aren't very, you know, don't really know, you know, have that kind of background knowledge and that steadfast qualifications behind them, and perhaps don't know exactly what they're doing. And that can give a bad reputation to people like myself.
But what I would say is, people that are advocating about the issues that the deaf community face should be celebrated, and we should be part of that community and embraced for what we're doing. I just want to get as many hearing people as possible out there signing at the first level, level 1, and then they can go on and do advanced levels if they choose. But to get that basic knowledge of conversation, so that if they meet a deaf signer wherever in the community, supermarket, bank, wherever, they can have that basic interaction.
Yeah,
that's what I want,
And that kind of pushback you've experienced, is that kind of like through social media, online, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I've had some personal attacks on social media over the years. I've had people snub me in social events. But, we're talking about a very small section of the deaf community that I've experienced that from. I've got many deaf friends, many associates and colleagues in the deaf community who are really pro what I do and what I stand for, and are very supportive. But I guess you get that across any
you get them
of the community, don't you?
It's the reason why I'm not on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, because of, like I said, it's certainly a platform that the elephant in the room right now, generally, that there's a lot of strong opinions, and a lot of platforms to share those opinions on. So absolutely, it's not a laser focused thing on the deaf community, or you indeed, but everybody. The reason what I was digging at, I guess, was the fact that online it'd be very easy for them to see the headline Emma Sharpe, not the Emma Sharpe who's the daughter of somebody who was deaf, and you lived with that experience and lived it. It's very easy to take a pot shot at a title, isn't it? And I think that's the problem, is they don't see the experience behind it. It's not as if you're doing this to be a mad millionaire, or you're actually doing this with actually a very personal reason at the core of what you're doing. And without that, it may not have taken wouldn't have taken you down this direction anyway. I think it just shows now more than ever we just need more compassion when we're speaking to people, and I think sometimes that's a real challenge at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I actually didn't intend to, it's just something that's close to my heart, but also, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep pushing away. And it's like the work you do. You're working. You're working in the prison service. I worked in the prison service through the college, Weston College, years ago, and I supported deaf inmates, and also taught prison officers how to be more deaf aware. And I'm going back to that, through yourself again, through your contact. I'm going back to speak to them. I have done. And I'm going to do some more work with them, because to me, I'm passionate about that fact that you've got deaf inmates in prisons that can't communicate with the officers, with their peers there, with other prisoners, because they have got a different language. So imagine a sign language user. They have the same needs as a hearing inmate. If they want to have counselling, if they want to access counselling, they've got to be able to talk to a counsellor that can sign to them. Otherwise, they don't have access to that. And that's what happened in one of the prisons I went into. An inmate that was very unhappy, partly because he was trying to go through rehabilitation of his crimes, but also he wanted to speak about his journey, what was important to him, and he couldn't. And he just, you could see him, sort of part of him just withering away, because he couldn't have that outlet, because there was no one to communicate with him. There's such an easy solution to that. Train some counsellors in sign language to an advanced level, to level 3, that's advanced level. That will give them a good command of language to be able to counsel someone. But there isn't the funding there. It's frustrating.
And as much as the work that I do, like using public speaking as a transformational tool, equally as transformational for you to actually be heard. And I think that's the connectivity. That's the bit that links everything, especially our worlds together, is all of these kind of elements of life and people, whether it be generational culture, through deafness, or any form of disabilities. You also mentioned like autism and mental health and so on. All these things, the commonality is it affects our sense of belonging, that we don't feel that we can be any better or stronger or wherever we're off right now. And I think then it forms that limiting belief. So that frustration that the guy that you were chatting to must have felt from not being able to get that out of him must have been overwhelming for him. Absolutely.
So true. And I was on a meeting the other day, an includability meeting. They're brilliant, includability. And I was talking to some professional colleagues there, and a similar theme came up in one of the breakout rooms. We were talking about people's sense of belonging in the workplace. And like you say, it doesn't matter if you're neurodivergent, if you are partially sighted, blind, you are deaf, you are hard of hearing, you have anxiety, you have agoraphobia, whatever it might be, whatever it is, mental health issues, whatever, you want to feel like you belong. And it's such a small thing, but has a massive impact, doesn't it, on your life if you don't feel that.
Yeah. And also, like, is that hope, isn't it? It's every single human, it's the hope or the hope of something better that drives everybody. And again, the impact, the hope of something better if you feel you're not truly being heard. And fascinating. I'm so pleased that we discussed this subject today, and thank you for giving up your busy time to be with us on the show today.
It's been amazing.
I'm sure everybody else has enjoyed it as much as I have. But before I let you go back into the wilds of West Somerset, I am now going to set you a scene. I'm now the MC of the O2 Arena in London. 20,000 people have paid their hard-earned money to come and hear you do your thing, whatever your thing is. You're sat back in the green room sipping a Prosecco, and you hear me call your name, and your walk-on music kicks in. The song that motivates you but lifts you, that gets you at peak state. Emma Sharpe, what would your walk-on music be and why?
Okay, so no thinking about this one. So my walk-on music would be Street Life, Randy Crawford and the Crusaders. Massive song. It's always been with me all my life. And Randy Crawford has been a special person in my life in terms of, what her songs mean to me, her as a person, as a musician, as an artist. And the song itself is all about survival, is all about fighting through things. And that's been me all my life with all the ups and downs.
Love that. Well, great way to finish the show. Emma Sharpe, big round of applause. Woo!
Woo-hoo, thank you. Thanks, Nick. You're an angel.
I don't know about that. I've been called a lot worse as well, so I'll take that somewhere in the middle. That's cool. But thank you. So for everybody else, like I said, day 2 of a podcast a day release week here in November. And tomorrow we have the wonderful Sarah Adderley coming at you, one of the founders of Help Me Angela, which is a help app for people that really need help, and she'll be telling us all about that and how it was founded and lots of different things. So really look forward to that episode 2. So hit like, subscribe, all that jazz, whatever it takes to get you back here tomorrow, do that. And for now, be well, have a great day ahead. Take care. See you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.